Welcome back all to the shop at Liberty Bell Beekeepers. I had a miserable week, and when I got home from work today I decided I was going to finish my last, or maybe my latest custom hive that I've been kind of sneak previewing a little bit here and there. This one kind of came about. I wasn't going to do another one. I did 3 already. I wasn't going to do another one this spring, but I had some time. I had all my other stuff ready, so I threw this together. We'll see how it works, and let's take a look. So, as you can see, this is a road cone that ended up in my parking lot and ended up on the loading dock of my shop. And I was thinking about doing a circular hive for a little while now. I wasn't sure how I was going to do it. I've actually since found some new ones that were pretty cool. And this one kind of came about really just because I felt like doing it. So as you can see, it's a road cone. I did put ventilation at the top. I just used a piece of PVC, just a PVC 90. I might add another little turn to that just to prevent any wind driven rain from going in, but I don't know that I'll need to. We'll see if I feel like it or not. For the entrance, I turned a piece of pine on my lathe to a 2-inch diameter cylinder, and I drilled a 1-inch hole in it, and that goes through all the insulation, the plastic, and into the hive body, which we'll get into in a moment. The dogs are always wanting to get involved. They're probably going to start barking. I have a little bit of work yet left to do on the lid. It has a hole here from the lighting systems that they use in these things, I believe, or maybe that's these holes, I'm not quite sure, but I'm going to close that up just because I don't want anything making a nest out of this lid, because it would be perfect for one. And I have to crimp this metal. Right now the lid's really tight. When I poured the foam, the 2-part polyurethane foam that I insulated the cavities with, it expanded faster than I wanted it to in a certain area, and it kind of made this oblong. So I got to get a pair of crimpers that you would use on like a downspout or ductwork, and just crimp this up, and that should handle and make it easier to get the lid on. The lid's really difficult to get on right now, which I'll try to address with that crimper. So in the lid, I also drilled a 2-inch hole and put screening on it, both top and bottom. Now, it's a big hole, 2 inches, but as you can see, that's the amount of space that I have coming out of this colony. The flashlight's really bright. It's kind of making it difficult to see but it's just basically like about an inch and a half on either side of the center frame, or just off a center frame. So it'll be there, and I might even turn it to the outside towards the outside frames, which would inevitably and eventually, I think, become the honey frames. But either way, it doesn't allow an enormous amount of airflow out of this, but I feel like it'll be enough just to get some air and keep some air moving with them. Like I said, you can get it on across one frame and get ventilation from 2 sides, or I can just do 1 or 2. We'll see how it goes, and I don't know ultimately that it will even matter. What I used is this here. It's a rigid casting foam. This is a 2-part foam. You mix it equal parts by weight or by volume. I always do. If you're ever mixing any resins or anything like that, liquids, preferably if you can do it by weight, you're better off. You get a more precise and a better reaction between the 2 parts of the material. This is, like I said, a rigid casting foam. It ends up You know, looking like any of the spray foams you would find at a home store, but this you mix yourself, and you can mix it specifically for volume, just as much as you need or as little as you need. I did a bunch of castings of these dinosaur heads a couple years back, and I have some laying around, so I use it every now and again with different projects. So here, as you can see, I poured it in between my inner chamber and the outer chamber, and I had to cut some of it back because it overpours. And you know, when you're doing casting foam, if you've ever casted foam, you got to, you know, it's a rotational cast, so you have to move it around and let the liquid roll around the surface, and then it starts to expand from there. But it expands very quickly, so you got to be real careful and real prepared to do it. As you can see, this is filled up, and I'm probably about an inch or two below the surface on this side. So it's not completely filled up, and I might even just get a can of spray foam and just empty it in there just to seal this hole off. But it's 98% filled with foam. Now what this ring, well, first there's the lid, 3/4 inch plywood, a 2-inch rigid foam, and then a 1/4 inch plywood on the underside with the vent hole. That's what I use for my lid here. As you can see, well, I don't know if you can see, but these are concrete sonotubes, concrete quickcrete tubes for pouring footings, a 12-inch and a 16-inch. In that I cut a plywood ring. Technically I cut 2 of them, one for the top, one for the bottom. Glued those and stapled them together, and then I drilled these holes, obviously, and poured that rigid casting foam inside, rolled it over, rolled it across the floor to allow that liquid to get around the sides, and then it eventually expands up and out towards the portholes. So now we're coming to the frames. Now, I was trying to think of ways to do these frames, and I initially wanted to try to do curved frames, but I felt like I was just, I don't know. I think I was thinking too much about it. Most of the colonies that I ever went into in those awkward spaces and rounded spaces, they always kind of built diagonally anyway. So I kind of just mimicked that with the frames. It kind of looks like a grill, but it's the same kind of thing. I have yet to add any supports, some cross supports to these. These are 24 inches tall. They're 1/2 inch on the sides, 3/4 inch block across the bottom, and it's a full 1x at the top that was rabbited out to accept the legs of the frame, if we want to call them that. I didn't put any groove in these. What I think I'm going to do is try to, I have an idea about making a pattern, a stencil up for beeswax. If anybody does cutouts or even have cleared a foundationless frame, when you clear it down to the wood, it still leaves that pattern of beeswax. And I want to recreate that, a stencil out of the plastic with that, and paint that onto this part of the frame to inspire wax building. I'm curious to see if it'll work, and these hives are completely experimental anyway, so I figured, hey, why not go fully experimental and try all the crazy ideas that I have. So I think I'm going to do that with this. I'm going to try that to stencil that wax pattern onto the top to get them to inspire building and to try to keep it as straight as possible in these frames so it can be inspected. I have to be inspected because I am what's technically considered a commercial beekeeper because of the number of colonies that I have. And, you know, these things are going to be on my property, so I have to have them, they have to be inspectable. That's the only reason I built frames. Initially, I thought about doing a top bar kind of setup with this and just let them build on a bar, but it's really deep, and I was concerned about support if and when I have to pull this thing apart. I wanted to try to give them the ability to build in these frames and to not destroy it every time I go and look at it. I don't plan on doing a whole lot of looking at these, but you know, inevitably, like I said, it has to be inspected. So it's going to be looked at, and I'm going to have to be able to get into it. So you can take a look at these. If I pull these out and set them out, it's a rounded configuration of frames. It's not anything exact or anything perfect, but I don't think it has to be. And I don't think anybody's ever designed anything quite like this. So it is what it is. Like I said, it's a rounded, it's meant to mimic a tree cavity in its round nature. So I built these frames accordingly, based on a circle, mapped it out. Now, it wasn't quite perfect. None of these are quite perfect. My cuts are all over the place, but I don't care. This was a lot of fun to build, and I'm building it in my spare time. I'm not thinking about, you know, mass producing these things or anything like that. So I'm not overly concerned about it being so perfect and beautiful that it's going to get a woodworking award. I just want to have something cool to put bees in. So that's that. And then they fit in there, and they you know, they come out just as easy as any other frame would. I imagine once they start gluing it up, it might be a little bit different, but everything fits pretty tightly. Like this lid fits down directly on top of the frame, so they're not even going to be able to get on top of these frames except where the vent is. Everything will be below, you know, all the building will take place below the surface of these frames. So I'm hoping I'm not going to have too much trouble when I go to inspect it or have to inspect it to you know, like I said, destroy all that comb that gets built. That lid, like I said, is a bit difficult to get on, and I can't do it while I'm holding the phone, but there it is. I love this thing. I can't wait to see if it gets bees. And looking forward to showing you guys what happens with it. As always, have fun. Enjoy your bees. This kind of stuff for me is fun. It's a good release. It's a good hobby. It's just a blast to do. And to me, you know, I love it. I love doing it. I hope everybody has fun when they're doing their beekeeping, because it should be. Most of us aren't commercial beekeepers. Most of us aren't keeping 1,200 hives and processing 300,000 pounds of honey. Most of us have a few hives, maybe 10, 15, 20, who knows? But most of us aren't that large-scale beekeeper that doesn't have time to build a parking cone beehive. I got that kind of time. I hope you guys enjoyed it. As always, check us out on social media and keep an eye out for more videos. I'll be coming back at you soon. See ya.